Welcome everyone to this joint event. We're very happy to collaborate with NACWA. And I want to welcome everyone joining really from around the world. We have more than 250 people registered and 65 unique utilities. So welcome everyone. Really happy to be here. We have 4 very innovative utilities that we're excited to feature. Just some background about SWAN. SWAN is the leading global hub for the smart water and wastewater sectors. We're a UK-based nonprofit. And if you go to the next slide, one of our most successful initiatives has been our Americas Alliance, which we started in 2016, which brings together leading players from North and South America to accelerate smart water and wastewater adoption. And you can see here some of the people involved, really leading utilities, large technology companies, startups, academics, and investors. And this is a great initiative, and we really welcome anyone who wants to get involved. And with that, I'd really like to just hand it off to Chris from NACWA to introduce the panelists. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Amir. And welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Chris Hornbeck. I'm Deputy CEO for NACWA, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. For those of you who are not familiar with NACWA, we're a trade association representing public wastewater and stormwater utilities across the United States on federal, legislative, regulatory, and legal issues. Our more than 330 public utility members, some of whom are featured on today's webinar, serve the majority of the nation's sewer population in the US. We're excited to be a member of SWAN, together working to advance smart water. For us, we're focused in the US, and we're excited to partner on today's event. I'm looking forward to hearing today's speakers. So to kick things off, let me introduce the moderator for our discussion, Keisha Powell. In her day job, Keisha is the Chief Operating Officer for DC Water here in Washington, DC. Keisha brings to DC her extensive knowledge of the water sector from her previous positions, including most recently as Commissioner of the Department of Watershed Management in the city of Atlanta. And NACWA is tremendously lucky to have Keisha as our Vice President this year. Keisha will introduce the speakers and moderate the discussion. So Keisha, take it away.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is one of my favorite topics because every time I am engaged in a discussion around smart water, I get a little bit smarter and learn how we can better serve our customers. So I'm really excited to hear. I've had a preview of the presentation, so I know they're good. For several years now, the water sector has been increasingly exploring the benefits of smart or digital water technologies and solutions. And each day it seems that there is a growing number of data-driven options for addressing a broadening array of water and wastewater challenges, from asset management to managing wet weather to treatment plant optimization and more. As the sector engages with federal policymakers on a potential major federal infrastructure package, let's not forget we need money, later this year, there is strong interest in using this opportunity to transition further into the smart water space. But what does that really mean for a particular utility? As with the adoption of anything new in the water sector, there is no one-size-fits-all approach for utilities. And whether because of a resistance to change or a lack of a demonstrated return on investment, there is still some hesitancy within the water sector to adopt these technologies and solutions. During today's webinar, we'll hear case studies from 3 leading US utilities on how smart water efforts have brought about operational and/or financial benefits to their organizations across the spectrum of water, wastewater, and stormwater. So let me introduce today's speakers. First, we have Yvonne Carney, who is the Director of Strategic Performance at WSSC Water in Maryland. Tom Jen is the Planning and Technical Services Manager for the Cobb County-Marietta Water Authority in Georgia. And Bethany Bezak is the Assistant Deputy Director of the Transportation and Stormwater Department for the city of San Diego, California. Each will provide some perspective on their utility's smart water efforts before we get into some Q&A. So let's start off with you, Yvonne. Take it away.
Great, thank you all. I'm excited to be here this afternoon. Let's see if I'm successful at switching the slides. There we go. All right, so thank you again for having me today. I'm excited to be here. First, so you know a little bit about WSSC Water. As Keisha mentioned, we're in Maryland and we're strong partners with DC Water, so delighted to be on a panel with Keisha. We provide 162 million gallons of water per day, serving 1.8 million customers in Prince George's and Montgomery County, Maryland. And in this graphic, you'll see illustrated all of the infrastructure that goes along with that to support our customers to make sure that we're providing safe and reliable water and returning clean water to our environment. And at WSSC Water, we are on a journey to world class. And we know that data plays a big role in getting us there. We can make better, more informed decisions when we target our efforts based on what the data tells us. For our strategic plan, which is summarized here, for example, we track our progress using key performance indicators that we, for each of our strategic priorities, and that we report in our commission performance report. And in order to really maximize the value of data, ultimately we need people to use it, which touches on some of the topics that Keisha introduced. We know that this isn't always easy, so I'm going to kind of focus on some of the things we've done at WSSC Water to address this. But some of the reasons that data isn't utilized as much as we think it could be could be things like it's difficult to access. It may not be presented in a way that's as easy to interpret as it could be. It could be unclear what data to focus on. We have a lot of it, and that is a benefit of the tremendous technology innovations that have happened in our industry. And then once the data is presented, there can be skepticism about the results, what the data says, as well as discomfort about potentially what it says and the potential change in direction it could point to. So as our general manager, Carla Reed, has emphasized in previous SWAN events, data-driven results can and do meet human-driven resistance. So we've acknowledged that, and we've created a specific initiative to promote the value of data in decision-making within WSSC Water. And today I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we've done on that front. All right, so I'm going to share some specific examples under 3 of our strategic priorities. But first, I'm going to dive into what we've been doing in supporting our H2O people, which is how we refer to our staff, with tools and resources to utilize data. So first and foremost, we want to make our data accessible. As we journey to world class, we want to align our metrics with key outcomes in our strategic plan. In addition, like many utilities, we have lots of data and it's housed in data silos. Just like we can have silos in our organization, we can also have those data silos. So what are we doing on that front? We're building a data mart so that we can bring that data together. We know that sometimes bringing that data together can help us to have insights that we wouldn't otherwise have. So for example, water consumption data that's most typically used within engineering to plan out our infrastructure needs can also be incredibly helpful within customer service and finance and communications to help see what's happening with our customer usage patterns, which has been particularly changing quite a lot during COVID. We also want data to be approachable, so we create user-friendly guides, and that's an image there on the left, to help staff get familiar with the data. We also want everyone to be on the same page. This can be, I'm sure many of you have run into this issue that someone might calculate something a little differently in one area than another area. And then you spend a lot of time just trying to sort that out and not necessarily taking action on the results. So we do a lot in the way of technical documentation, which is also very helpful to our friends in IT who we work with so closely to help really say exactly what we want to measure and getting buy-in and sign off on what those measures are. Next, we want to make data easier to interpret. So what we've done on this front is we have over 130 of our employees have gone through a one-day training, which has switched to becoming a virtual training, as many of us have switched our trainings. And in that training, employees learn how to make a chart that's really effective. And part of that is making sure it conveys a specific message and to highlight relevant information and really to craft a story around that data. What we ultimately want is the data that's in people's spreadsheets, that's awesome data. We want that to be in the hands of decision makers. So we help our staff to kind of hone their skills in that area. In addition, we've provided training on specific analysis tools, whether it be Excel or Microsoft Power BI, to encourage the use of self-service analytics. So that's providing more access to data and tools within the departments for analysts who are closest to the action to get to the data and to provide answers quickly. In addition, I'm really excited. We're soon to be launching a virtual data community because we're all just so used to being on Zoom and Teams, and we're with a year at it. We're great at that technology, and we're great at coming together that way. So we are planning to have, a once a month get together of all the folks who are sort of data enthusiasts within the organization and sort of build on all that training that we've provided and kind of keep that going and be an ongoing resource. Next, I'm going to transition to talking about some specific examples of how we have used data to drive decisions. And I want to start off with an example that really illustrates the power of data as it relates to infrastructure. And some of you may have heard this one presented before at a previous SWAN conference, but I really want to emphasize it because it's just so powerful. So this one is acoustic fiber optic technology that we utilize. And this technology is used, we lay fiber optic cables inside pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipes. The cable detects the sounds associated with wires that can break on the inside of those pipes. The system continuously monitors the integrity of our large mains and provides notification to our engineers when it detects an audible ping from breaking wires. When we get that notification, we can determine when the pipe should be replaced. This program got its start at WSSC in 2010 after a catastrophic transmission line break in 2008. And now we have one of the longest AFO monitoring systems in the country, over 100 miles. So we have invested $21 million in AFO technology, saving our customers more than $88 million by alerting us more than 44 times to potential major breaks. And I wanted to start with this example because it's just such a powerful example of how data can be a proactive tool that keeps our customers safe, avoids unplanned water disruption, and saves us money. So it's a win-win-win. And we continue to find innovative ways to use technology. We want to inspire our staff, our H2O people, to discover, nurture, and apply breakthrough innovations. So I just pulled a couple of examples where data plays a really important role. And this one is our pilot for enhanced biological phosphorus removal. Our challenge here is the cost of chemicals. Alum for phosphorus removal is a significant cost to us, over $1 million a year. And the idea is, can we use microorganisms to remove phosphorus? So we did a pilot and we saw a significant reduction, 45% drop in alum use, which is a significant savings at one of our facilities. And so we're now moving into a full-scale pilot test at another facility. Again, sort of diving into the data to see if these approaches could work to save WSSC water customers money. Next example with an issue that challenges many utilities is water loss. So we piloted different kinds of leak detection technology. For WSSC Water, our loss can be range from between 16 to 18% in the last few years. So the idea was, can we use acoustic or satellite technology to detect leaks? So we did a pilot to test out these ideas and found that one technology significantly reduced the cost per leak found. So now we're using the satellite was found to be the best option for us. And so now that is in the implementation phase, and we're monitoring the data and the results to see if that's something we should continue to do. So those were a few infrastructure and operations related examples. And I wanted to pop around to other areas of data to give you some different kind of examples. So this one is our past due accounts data and how that has been used to inform our customer strategy. So COVID-19, as we all know, is significantly impacted the employment and financial situation of many WSSC Water customers, as is true for many utilities across the country and across the world. So, and just to quantify that, the number of past due accounts has increased by 16,000 since March 2020, and increasing the amount past due by almost $30 million. So we have used data, and you'll see illustrated on the right there, a map of our percent of accounts that are past due by zip codes within our service area. And we use this data in a cross-departmental billing and revenue task force meeting to really make it front and center what are the circumstances of our hardest hit customers. And we use this data to drive our outreach strategy, to promote our financial assistance programs, and we do that with elected officials, with nonprofits, homeowners associations, and other groups, as well as use social media. And we are able to really target our use of social media to those zip codes that are most impacted. We also use this data to focus our revenue recovery efforts by encouraging our customers to get on payment plans. So when COVID hit, we were in the middle of developing a drill down dashboard out of our relatively new billing system that had been implemented in July 2019. We had already spent a lot of time in the fall of 2019 with our senior leaders defining high-level metrics and targets. And so we were able to leverage that foundation to modify and pull in more data from the billing system about how long accounts were past due, geographic breakdown, which you saw on the previous slide, payment plan utilization, and also look at other sources of data like unemployment. This provided us an opportunity to have a single source of information and support alignment toward a common objective, reinforced by meetings to discuss policy issues and make decisions and take actions. My last example are around how we've used data to communicate with our employees and provide transparency during the COVID pandemic. WSSC Water leadership committed to being very transparent with our employees about what was going on. Obviously, there's so many unknowns in the world. Being transparent was something that was very well received by our staff to at least know get a flavor of what is going on, even if we don't know all the answers, to be transparent with our employees. And so some of the methods we used were a bi-weekly all-employee live stream meeting, which continues today, having a dedicated email address for employees to send questions, and then having what you see on the screen as a snapshot of a report to employees that pulls in operational metrics to help us take a look and see if our operations approach during COVID was having any impact on our operations. And so you can see that through the report. We also developed a return to workspace dashboard, and in order to be very transparent with our employees about what key metrics our leadership is looking at to inform those decisions. And so on this dashboard was publicly available public health information via APIs, as well as non-identifying information regarding both employee illness and vaccines. So some final thoughts to share. Super excited that there's over 60 utilities on this call. I think we're probably all in various places on our smart water journey. And so if some of this is new, I encourage you not to be overwhelmed, but to start where you are. Starting small is good. Progress is progress. Also, I encourage you to find data advocates within your utility. There are people that have been hard at work at this before it was called Smart Water, and they are going to be delighted to work with you. If they have issues that they have been maybe trying to get attention to and visibility to, and they can help point you in the right direction. And then lastly, just encourage you to provide data tools and resources to your staff. With the right tools and just a little bit of training, staff will knock your socks off. So I thank you for this opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you, Yvonne. Now we'll go to Tom.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to this and the question and answers. So I'm Tom again with the Cobb County-Marietta Water Authority, and we're a wholesaler. So we do not have any, I'm trying to control the screen, sorry. We don't have any retail customers. We have 10 customers. Those customers are other water utilities and one large industry. Those customers in turn serve drinking water to 800,000 people. Historically, like in 2007, 2008, our peak day was 150 million gallons of water per day. That's what our system is designed to deliver, is 150 million gallons of water a day. Since then, our demands have dropped considerably with water efficiency and other types of initiatives. Our average demand day today is 80 million gallons a day. And in the last 5 years, our peak day has been only 120 million gallons of water per day. We only have 200 miles of pipe, but that is large diameter transmission main pipe, 36 to 54 inches in diameter. Generally, it's a loop around the service area with feeder pipes, going to specific geographic areas. We have 3 pump stations that pump water into this. It's one common pressure zone. The pressure varies from 20 to 230 PSI. Our annual revenue is about $80 million, and we only have a staff of 110 employees. So why did we start looking into smart water? Well, the Water Authority has a history of tapping saddle failures, and it's not particularly important to describe that today, but the result of a tapping saddle failure is you end up with a pretty large leak. You can imagine how much water will flow out of a 36-inch diameter pipe being fed from both sides through an 8-inch diameter hole at 150 PSI. You can calculate that, but that's all the water that's going to flow through that outlet, no more. And because our system is designed to deliver 150 million gallons of water a day, that's 7,000 to 10,000 gallons per minute. It didn't create a big pressure drop in our system. It did create a static drop, but it was not particularly large, and sometimes it went unnoticed. So here's an example of that. In the summer of 2013, we were hoping to sell more water. This chart shows our daily demand. That's the blue line, and the purple line is the rainfall. So you can see that when it would rain, sometimes that would cause the demand to drop, which was what it ought to be, but we'd only gotten up to 95 million gallons a day of water production that year. In August, our demands went up, and we were glad. We thought, yay, people are finally starting to use water. This was 2013, what can I say? But then a week or two later, we realized, hey, it just rained, and our demand didn't drop very much. So we realized maybe we have a leak. Well, we found a leak. We actually found 2 leaks. And when you subtract the estimate of those leaks out, this is what our water demand should have been for that time period. we had 2 leaks. Both of them were about 18 million gallons a day. One leak ran for 14 days and the other leak ran for 4 days. We didn't realize that we had those leaks. Next summer, 2014, similar situation. You see the daily demands, you see the rainfall. We didn't realize we had leaks. But this summer, again, we had 2 leaks. And if you subtract them out, this is what the actual demand was without those leaks. One of them was a 12 million gallon a day leak and it ran for 30 days. And you're asking, how can you lose 12 million gallons a day and not know it? We did. We didn't have any tools. We measured static pressure, but we didn't really have any tools for measuring flow rate in the system. We didn't have any tools other than gut feel for knowing what our demand ought to be on any given day. We had a second leak later in the year, 12 million gallons a day. It ran for 14 days. So in 2014, we started asking ourselves, okay, what is smart water? We've got to figure out a way to find these leaks. So what is this smart water that everybody's talking about? So in 2014, when you said smart water, people said AMI. However, the Water Authority is a wholesaler. We have 10 customers. Our largest customer purchases approximately 2/3 of our water. So we don't actually have meters going to our largest customer. We measure how much water we pump into the system, and then we sub-meter the other 9 customers. We have about 100 boundary meters for those 9 customers. Matter of fact, our billing system was so simple that in 2014, we were using an Excel spreadsheet to bill $80 million worth of revenue each year. System's relatively simple the way it's organized. So for us, smart water did not equal AMA. For us, smart water was about finding these leaks. So in 2014, we began an initiative to find the leaks. We started looking at how do we monitor for the leaks, and can we estimate how much water we might be selling on a given day based on weather conditions. So we found that the tapping saddle failures, they created a relatively small static pressure drop, but they created a really big pressure transient. So in 2016, we installed pressure transient monitors around our system. We installed a dozen of them all around our loop. Those were so good that coupled with a improvement in how we're estimating the water sales that we ought to have. And an engineering intern did that for us. So interns are great. You should always have a few of them around. They bring you really good ideas. But after 2016, when those tapping saddle failures occur, we find them in less than a day now. So success, what next? So new decade, 2020. What does smart water look like for a well-run, financed, drinking water only, no retail customer, wholesale water authority serving drinking water to 800,000 persons with a staff of only 110 employees? From that description, I hope you understand that we're a little bit different. We're big, but we're small, depending on which metric you look at. So we have kind of had a hard time finding solutions that seem to fit us properly. I'm a civil engineer. I do the modeling, I look at the data. There are so many cool things that we could do. A lot of things we could spend money on. But we didn't want to jump into things without having a really good plan. So we decided that rather than jumping into things, and we have 110 employees, so everybody's really busy anyway. We decided we needed to come up with a way to strategize and prioritize what was smart water going to look like for the Water Authority. So we did what any self-respecting utility does. We hired a consultant and we had a workshop. We brought in about a dozen people and from different groups of the Water Authority, and we started asking them questions. We said, what do you need? Operations folks said, hey, can the hydraulic model be used by non-experts? They also said, why do we have to double enter so much data into so many different data systems? The maintenance folks said, where are the O&M manuals? I can't find the information I need when I need it. And they're never up to date. They said, we have monitoring equipment, temperature on the temperature of the bearings, vibration on a lot of our rotating equipment. Why can't we predict when that piece of equipment needs to be maintained before it actually fails? They also ask, where is the data? Even our finance department had questions. Why can't the project managers give us accurate cash flow projections from the contractors? Why can't we auto-create a budget from all of this asset data that you say you're collecting? At first, I thought, that is not smart water. The longer I thought about it, I realized all these people were really asking the same question, and I'll summarize that in a moment. We've got a great IT department. They said, hey, you tell us what you need, and we will make it happen. There's one other group of people that we decided we needed to ask. And it's that young person that we haven't hired yet. And I think if we ask them the question, their answer would be, tell me again why I just can't do this on my smartphone. So this is a roadmap we created. You don't need to see or be able to read all of that. There's a lot up there. We had a dozen people in the room throwing ideas out. This is divided up into the different sections: people issues, processes, technology. We were talking about smart water technology. And I was so surprised when the majority of our discussion focused not on the technology. People threw out a lot of ideas, but the discussion centered on people issues. And it didn't take long for me to realize that what this really is this is a people issue. First and foremost, smart water is a change management challenge. So every business function, they have their own specific version of what the technology needed to be, but they all include these basics. We need to move the organization in this direction, not so much for the sake of today's worker, but for the sake of tomorrow's workforce, being able to get the best people into the water industry. I am tired of looking for data that I know we already have somewhere. I know there must be a software that will deliver to me the information I need in the form I need it and in time for me to make actionable decisions without having to type the raw data in myself every single time. So an example for you, I want you to think about, I want to ask you, if you're like me, smart data is all around us. My phone knows where I'm going to go before I actually go there, or at least it seems to. And I want to ask you, how many of you have balanced your checkbook recently? If you're like me, it's been years since you've balanced your checkbook. When it's time to balance your checkbook, or when it's time to know what's in your bank, you pull out your phone and you look at the data on your banking app. Those kinds of changes are going to come to the water industry as well. And it's a change management issue to figure out how to manage that change and how to best prepare our workforce for that. So the Water Authority kind of broke down our future direction into a two-pronged approach. We want to have a number of short-term, achievable, limited pilot efforts. There's so many things that we could do. We want to try some of them. We want to see what works, get some small wins under our belt, build some excitement. We talked about what did people say? Where are the documents? We're going to do a pilot implementing a simplified version of BIM to make asset data records available to people just using an internet browser. Training of new staff, knowledge retention for staff that are about to retire. We want to look into implementing a digital twin model of our water treatment process for that. Monitoring the condition of our pumps and all of our other pieces of equipment. There are a lot of really good softwares that I've seen. We want to pick one of those, maybe two of those, and pilot them and try them out, see what happens. But in the long term, and Yvonne really touched on this, data integration. The data has got to be accessible to people, and it's got to be in a location where analytics can be done. So there needs to be one place, one source for data. And really listed it last here, but it ought to be the first. It's most important. It's the people issues. We need to find the right change management champions. We need to create a steering committee, and we need to look at our hiring process and our training processes. I was excited when Yvonne mentioned that the WSSC has created a training program teaching their staff how to create the right kinds of data charts. depending on what message you're trying to get across. So we've talked also about the need to revamp our hiring criteria and think about what kind of data skills do the people that we hire need to have. So I appreciate getting to speak today. I hope that what I've said has been useful, and looking forward to the question and answer sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing. Great presentation as well. Now we'll move on to Bethany.
Thank you so much, folks, and I am really excited to be here today. It looks like the video is not working here. Is the host able to enable the video capabilities? Really pleased to be here with you today and excited to be presenting San Diego's version of going digital and using smart water. So the city of San Diego, I'll be presenting on specifically our stormwater infrastructure. We do consider our stormwater infrastructure to be just like every other hard asset, including water and wastewater here in the city. And so what we want to do is to be able to manage stormwater just like all other infrastructure and assets that need to be managed and maintained over time. And so what I'll be presenting today is the opportunity of how we've upgraded our asset management system to be in line with the rest of the infrastructure and assets within the city of San Diego, and that allowing us to go digital has opened up a world of opportunities for us in terms of communication, advocating for funding, and being more operationally innovative, really, with our infrastructure. So a little bit of background on the city of San Diego. For our stormwater system, we manage a vast infrastructure system that's across the entire city, a lot of centralized assets, but also decentralized assets. So things like our pump stations, which are very centralized, easier to maintain relatively because they're in one location, and they've got defined asset infrastructure and parts, to more decentralized or more programmatic assets and infrastructure like our street sweeping. So we manage a vast array of infrastructure. It accounts for around $6 billion if we were to replace all of that infrastructure today. In terms of the challenges that we face, I imagine if I were in a room today and if we were in person, I would be asking you if you face these challenges, and I imagine everyone would be raising their hands because many of these are common across all of the utilities nationally, whether you're large or small, whether or not you're located on the East or the West Coast. All of these challenges are pretty consistent. So we face things like aging infrastructure. The vast majority of our physical assets have been aging. They're past their useful life, so we continue to have challenges associated with that. We're facing urbanization, so a growing population, as well as more people, but also more impervious spaces as well. Climate change and resiliency are certainly a challenge associated with being a coastal community and also seeing increases in precipitation. And then, of course, ongoing regulatory challenges and requirements. So the result of these challenges is that we have a lot of infrastructure that has already started to fail. So we've got nearly 2,000 pipe failures that are known for our stormwater infrastructure and assets. We have over $25 million per year of unanticipated and unfunded emergency projects, and hundreds of claims ultimately that we're having to deal with and face because of the infrastructure that we're managing and we're needing to maintain. So in terms of these challenges, we found that we needed to go digital and we needed to have a centralized asset management system to be able to overcome some of these challenges and to move to be more innovative and creative. And so what we've done is we've undertaken a 2-year effort to upgrade our asset management system to be in line with the rest of the infrastructure that is managed across the city of San Diego. We've gone through and we've updated our inventory and our assets, and we've been focused on the following goals. One is to be able to utilize data. We want to be able to utilize historical data, but also real-time data to be able to manage our risks and achieve the long-term goals for our program. We want to be able to use this information to prioritize future projects and actions moving forward so that we're using our funds responsibly and wisely. And then we also want to be able to leverage existing assets or infrastructure in new or creative ways that meet other goals, maybe for our department and other goals across the city as we're starting to implement other work. And ultimately, The last goal, which is very important, is to be able to communicate our needs, be very transparent about the work that we're providing, and to be able to justify the spending for the work that we're doing. So all of that was really rolled up into this 2-year effort that I mentioned at the very top of the presentation. We undertook an effort to upgrade our asset management plan or program specifically for stormwater, and the magnitude of the challenge is quite extensive. So the reason that was a 2-year effort is that we have over 80,000 physical assets, individual locations and assets, and that amounts to, just as I said, a $6 billion replacement value for all of that infrastructure. We manage hundreds of different management strategies in terms of the type of infrastructure, the activities that we need to perform, and the frequency of the maintenance activities. And it accounts to an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of infrastructure that we need to manage. And the vast majority of it is related to water quality or more of the compliance rather than the flood control or risk aspect. So having all of this information in one location and being able to have an updated inventory, updated assets and infrastructure that's visible in GIS, and to be able to monetize it long-term has been incredibly valuable in terms of being able to go digital. So there's an enormous amount of opportunities that exist to be able to be in this space. We undertook this effort with what's a very traditional approach, actually, that's widely accepted by EPA and others, to go through a really a pretty thoughtful and targeted approach to how we would integrate our assets and infrastructure into the asset management system. We needed to know what we own and what we manage, what's the level of service or the activities and the functions that we need to perform, which of those assets and activities is most critical in terms of the condition and the business risk exposure, which I'll mention here in a bit, and then how to optimize those management strategies. And then lastly, what do I need to do to fund it and how much money do I need to fund it? So again, this is a pretty standard approach, but we found that going through this very methodologically allowed us to really maximize the opportunity for asset management and for this data-driven decision-making. We utilized a process where we initiated and identified the POF, which is the probability of failure, the COF, the consequence of failure, to ultimately get to a BRE for all of our infrastructure and our assets. From a POF standpoint, we looked at capacity, level of service, our asset life and efficiency, pretty typical engineering terminology in terms of condition assessment. And then we also looked at the consequence of failure. So those were starting to fold into more some of those social values, the economic values, and the environmental values combined, and ultimately would give us a BRE number for all of our infrastructure and assets. So now with all of our infrastructure in one common location, housed in a centralized asset management plan, we were able to assign all of our infrastructure to a business risk exposure, which allowed us to ultimately monetize our assets and our needs long-term. So an enormous amount of work went into this, but we've seen that there's been great value and utility across both our physical assets and what we would consider our programmatic or non-physical assets, really. So physical assets that could be pumps, pipes, channels, structural practices, physical locations typically centralized that have a hardened asset associated with it. We also were able to monetize our programmatic assets, which are more activity-driven types of infrastructure. So things like our street sweeping program and other operations and maintenance-related activities were also integrated as part of this asset management program. What you'll see here in a few slides is that allowed us to be able to start leveraging all of the activities and the infrastructure across our entire program to be able to spend money as wisely as possible. At the end result of our updates to our asset management plan, we actually were able to create a heat map with this business risk exposure. We identified the POF and the COF for all of our infrastructure, and we identified the most high-risk locations. And all of those were able to be monetized and placed in a ranked order or priority that allows us to be able to make real-time decisions about where to spend resources, but it also allows us to manage our program year over year in the 5 to 10 year range as well, because of having all of this information located in one location. It also allows us to be highly visible and transparent in terms of the location and the condition of our assets in terms of the physical location. So having tools where we have dashboards where the location of our assets and infrastructure are digitized, and we can see in a very clear and meaningful way by colors and shapes where we need to send our crews on a daily basis, where we need to identify more priorities and more activities, more frequencies associated with the work. So here's an example of our catch basins for one of the watersheds within the city of San Diego. And then lastly, having a rolled up dashboard that allows us to see our entire programmatic infrastructure and identifies it in a really easy way for management to be making decisions was also valuable. So this is just an example screenshot of the types of categories of information that we have available to us. So looking at very high line items like the total replacement cost, the total number of assets, how we're performing in terms of our KPIs, all of that is now much more visible to us than it ever was before. So we're able to achieve this geospatial view of our assets. We're able to understand our inventory and the condition assessment. And ultimately, we are able to actually assign costs now and escalation for future projects. So with all of that information in one location, not only did it allow us to actually leverage operational issues and to be able to plan into the future, one of the things it's also allowed us to do is to be much more transparent and have clearer communication associated with the needs for our program. So the Stormwater Program is funded currently under the general fund, and we receive around $50 million per year to manage our overall stormwater program. The needs are much more extensive. As you can see, as they're represented here, we need over $274 million on an average annual year to operate our stormwater system and manage our program. So there's an enormous deficit. And by having the information in a centralized location and being able to monetize our infrastructure with all of the updates I just talked with you about, allowed us to actually be able to start communicating in a really clear manner about what our needs are. Without being able to go digital and be smart about our infrastructure, we would have never been able to clearly communicate the needs for our program. And so what we're doing currently is we're also, in addition to our asset management and going digital, we are actually working to advocate for and acknowledge that we have great needs for stormwater and look towards a potential ballot measure for a stormwater dedicated funding measure or fee, potentially in 2022. So we've identified a funding strategy approach. We've gone through and identified where all our gaps are, where the efficiencies are that we currently have, and additional efficiencies that we could have in the future. We've benchmarked all of our funding and financing options, and we've been able to be very clear and transparent about these needs because we've had all of this information now at our fingertips. So lastly, I'll close with a few other strategies that we've identified because of having this information available to us. By going digital, it's allowed actually our field worker crews to be able to make the biggest meaningful impact every single day when they're going out in the field, and they've got tablets, they've got work orders that are being generated, and they're able to give us real-time information about how our program is performing. That's allowed us to start advocating for things like efficiencies, like adding an additional pipe repair team and showing how meaningful their work is and how quickly they can do the repairs. Advocating for additional street sweeping route optimization and adding more posted routes, and increasing other innovation across our program. So having this information has been incredibly valuable as we've gone digital and had everything in a single location. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Bethany. And to Tom and Yvonne, these are just great presentations that show practical applications of the use of smart technology and innovation. I'm going to jump right into the questions because I think, Yvonne, from your, I don't know, 5th sentence, you started getting questions. So I'm just going to jump right into the Q&A. This one is from Juan to Yvonne. How does WSSC decide which technologies to pilot?
Yeah, great question. So we have a innovation hub where our employees submit their ideas, and then we do have a process to review those. We, in some cases, it's something we might be able to refer them through IT. For example, maybe a year ago, an idea came in from someone wanting to use a new visualization software. So, I was referred to me, and I helped them get going on that. But for other uses of technology, our innovation team reaches out to the operating department first to kind of like vet that and see if it really would be useful. And then get sort of the go ahead, hopefully, to move forward with testing it out.
Just mute Keisha, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. This is for Tom. Where is the digital twin water treatment plant model project at right now? What's the status?
It's about what I've said. we are ready to start thinking about making sure that is one of the priorities we're going to tackle later this year. And beyond that, if anyone has any suggestions on vendors, I'm wide open to hear them. I know that I've seen several presentations for wastewater treatment process modeling. I'm not sure that I've ever seen one for water treatment process modeling.
Thank you. Bethany, how does climate change affect change? How does climate change affect the forecast of BRE?
So great question. BRE is a combination of the probability and the consequence of failure. So the probability of failure is increased because of climate change. The consequence of failure potentially is increased because of climate change. So what we're seeing is that we're getting more intense storms, and we're getting longer storms that last several days. So we're seeing the period of the wet period in San Diego is actually getting much more intense, and it's more difficult for us to manage because of the sheer amount of volume that we're seeing within our stormwater system. So that's ultimately how it's changing for us. So we're seeing that our infrastructure and our assets can't quite manage the level of the storm events that we're able to previously.
And can you talk about how long it took to digitize your asset management system, how you're updating the system and collecting data?
Yeah, so also a good question. I would say that continues to be a work in progress. I would say we're never done with that. We're always finding new assets and new infrastructure in the field that we need to confirm the ownership and maintenance responsibility for, and to be able to continue to digitize. Or likewise, assets that are in the field that we need to change the ownership or the type of asset while we're in the field. So I would say it's an ongoing process, but it took us around 2 years to overhaul our asset management program, build on the previous work that we've had before, and then to update infrastructure and assets.
Thank you for that. I'll ask this question to all of you. How has the digital journey been received by your employees? We'll start with you, Yvonne.
Sure. I think that it's over. Well, let me back up to say we hopefully later this year are going to start work on a formal digital strategy. So we do not have one now, but I would envision, or we envision that will be a lot of employee engagement in that. Obviously the staff that are closest to it have the best insights on what might be useful. And there's just such a range of potential options of directions to go, all kind of informed by like our appetite for change. So I would say we want to be really intentional about that and have a good strategy to involve our employees in that process. I think just to give one example, This was totally unplanned. I think all of us went through this with during COVID, but we overnight switched to being using our Microsoft Teams. We didn't necessarily we didn't have a game plan in place for that, so that was nerve-wracking for some, and for many. A few teams had used it before, but we fully embraced it now, and are using a lot of features we didn't use before, using new technologies to do. Just earlier today, we were trying out a new like kind of brainstorming technology that you could put stickies virtually, and just one example, something relatively simple, but really can change the way you do work. And so I think a lot of employees see a lot of opportunity. I just think when we try new things, we have to be real intentional, make sure that people learn in different ways, and to make sure we acknowledge that and help prepare our staff.
Thank you. How about Bethany? Do you want to share how your employees have received the efforts that have been put into going digital there?
So I would say it's a good question, and I think the question could be asked about multiple different layers of our organization. I'll start at the kind of the field worker. I consider the field worker our eyes and ears in the field, and they have an enormous amount of information that they're seeing and they're acquiring every day. So I think that they have the greatest ability to impact our information and our condition, our assessments, or the quality of our data. They also are the greatest beneficiaries of that information as well. So I think the reason I'm answering the question in this way is because I think that they have the ability to be most impactful. And when you're able to get the field workers on board and help them see how it's ultimately going to benefit them, then it's a win across your entire organization. So I think that where you need to start with that is your field workers. Once they're on board and they see what they're going to get out of it, they are completely on board and they're ready to help and assist.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that they have an opportunity to inform the decisions as we move forward, so that we have that immediate buy-in and they understand what's in it for them. Fully agree. Tom, question for you is, how did your transition to BIM for asset management, or does that cover large mechanical or also or facilities, both? How has that transition to using that technology been?
Yeah, so I mentioned it was going to be a simplified BIM approach. It's more focused on a digital document management strategy. We have, if you can imagine, you get a box of O&M manuals for a project, and maybe most of those O&M manuals get put on the shelf, but one of them gets lost just because someone borrowed it and didn't bring it back. But think about, digital documents. It's easier to lose a digital document than it is to lose a paper document, in my opinion. But it's also easier to have 20 versions of that document and nobody really knows where the official one is. So we're going to do a pilot project using some BIM type strategies on our most recent large construction project, where all the documents are digital, they're already in one place. And rather than just turning them over to the operations side like we've done in the past, we're going to build a document management system for them and then turn that tool over. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. This question is for each of you. How did you get your smart water journey started? First 3 steps. Yvonne?
So we started with a refresh of our commission performance report. So kind of starting at the highest levels, what do we want our senior leadership team and our commissioners to have visibility to? And in full transparency, we didn't, that didn't start off as high tech. That's a nice looking Excel behind the PDF. And but we wanted to make sure that you know, that we didn't start at such a small level that we couldn't have a big impact. So that's how we started. Second step was kind of an opportunity because we were implementing a new billing system. We were replacing a mainframe system that had been built in-house, and that really just didn't provide us the opportunity to do a lot of the things we're able to do now. So a little bit of it is just kind of grabbing that opportunity and leveraging a new technology to its fullest. And then thirdly, I think it's really engaging staff. We've done, like I said, we've had about 5 or 6 trainings, and really involving a wide range of employees, and at very different levels. Our general managers general manager, our leadership team members have participated, analysts in a variety of departments. And so I think providing those tools has helped us to accelerate our efforts.
Thank you. And Tom, you touched on this a little in your presentation, what led you to even consider this journey, but if you could just summarize again your first 3 steps to get started, because I know in our pre-discussion you talked about, you know, where do you start, how do you start?
I'm going to give you two different answers. I'm going to tell you the way we did it prior to 2020, because we saw a need and somebody tried to do something about it. And some of those succeeded spectacularly. But most of those efforts met with very limited or no success. There have been several things that we thought were great ideas. Let me rephrase that. There have been several things that one person thought was a great idea, and we put it out there and nobody used it. Nobody looked at it. It didn't really meet any real needs in people's day-to-day jobs. There's been other things that have been done that met a need, and people jumped on it and used it. In the future, you know, what we're looking to do in a much more strategic way is, rather than the hit and miss approach that we've taken for the last few years, is to try to, you know, first, I do need to mention, you know, security. First, you need to make sure you have the appropriate level of security for your operations data. And then secondly, you look for solutions that fit what your utility needs. You know, some utilities need big solutions. Some utilities need small solutions. And I say this tongue in cheek, but if you can cost effectively do whatever it is you're needing to do on the back of a napkin, isn't that the right way to do it, really? Nah, never mind. The other issue, you know, is that smart water just really opened my eyes to realize I was looking at it as a technology issue. We've got to bring these technologies in. And I think that's where I have been missing the boat for the last few years. Is it's not a technology issue. It's the people issue. It's a change management issue. The world is going to drag us there sooner or later, because that's the way the world is moving. Our industry tends to be conservative. In order to remain, what's the word I'm looking for? In order to remain competitive workplaces, we're going to need to give young people the tools that make them want to come here. If we don't have those kind of technology tools, the best and brightest of the young people, they're going to go work in banking or something like that instead of the water industry. So we need to be, as an industry, we need to be strategic. In the utility, you need to be strategic about bringing the right tools to bear at the right time. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree with you. It's not just about the technology and the tools and the shiny new stuff. It's smart water encompasses making different business decisions in different ways and utilizing the data to drive decision making, and being able to attract a workforce of a new generation, and leveraging smart water to make our jobs easier, certainly. We are running up on time, so I'm going to go through a round of rapid fire questions for each one of you. So I'm just asking you to agree or disagree. And I'm going to start with Bethany, then we'll go to Tom, and then we'll go to Yvonne. Okay, and we've got 3 rapid fire questions. So agree or disagree. Smart water adoption is hindered more by resistance to change than by available solutions. Agree or disagree? Bethany.
Agree.
Tom.
Agree.
Yvonne.
Agree.
Agree or disagree? Cybersecurity threats will hinder widespread adoption of smart water solutions across the sector. Bethany.
Disagree.
Tom.
I slightly agree. I think it'll slow it, but it's not going to stop it.
And Yvonne.
Ditto to Tom on that.
Okay, last rapid fire question. The water sector will be the leader among all infrastructure categories in deployment of smart technologies and solutions within the next 5 to 10 years. Agree or disagree? Bethany.
Agree.
Tom.
Disagree.
Yvonne.
Strong agree.
Tom, I'm interested in your disagree.
The water industry is very conservative, and by nature we have to be. And I'm coming at this from a drinking water perspective. Okay, the drinking water industry, the consequences of being wrong are huge. I mean, one of the things I like to remind people is, if you're in a drinking water utility, you're not in the business of being cost efficient, even in the business of being efficient at all. You're not in the business of being a leader. You're not in the business of anything but providing safe drinking water to the public. And you can be the best in anything else, but if you fail at that, you have failed. The only purpose you had, you failed it. So I think that at least on the drinking water side, our industry is always going to lag behind. We are never going to want to be cutting edge.
I think we do have parts of our sector that are very risk averse, and in many cases we have to be. But one of the things that I enjoy about forums like this, and I'm so grateful to SWAN and NACWA for partnering to bring this to not only utilities in this sector, but folks around the world are watching us, I understand, is to really challenge our mindsets on how far we can push and become more smart. But I agree with you, Tom. The important thing is the quality of the product. If we lose that and lose the trust of our stakeholders, then we have some real big challenges. So with the last few minutes that we have, I'm just going to ask each of you, and we'll start with you this time, Tom, to give us some closing thoughts, advice to those solution providers out there, because we did have a couple of questions from perhaps solution providers. How should they best approach you with relevant solutions to drive operational and financial impact? And then what should they not do?
They're not going to like my answer. I have been asking myself that question as well, because I have talked over the last few years, I have talked to so many vendors who've got so many neat, really good ideas and products. And the challenge, I think, from the vendor perspective, you got to be a salesman. And you're going to need that salesman's intuition and salesman's luck. And I hate to say this, sometimes it boils down to nothing more than being in the right place at the right time. So don't give up on us. keep pitching your ideas to us, but I'm sorry, but you just have to know that 95% of the time, my answer is going to be, oh, this looks really interesting. Not ready for it, but it looks really interesting. You know, keep developing it. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that, but I've been asking myself, because There are so many different vendors out there that have got so many good ideas, and I don't know how to sort them out.
Thank you. Bethany?
Yeah, so recommendations I would say is to identify the champion and the decision maker within an organization so that you're going to the right person and you're providing relevant and useful information. And then the second thing is to know our program. So certainly if you're approaching a municipality, you need to know the program, you need to know what our challenges are, you need to know what the opportunities are. We're not going to tell you that. You should be able to come and be able to explain how your product is going to benefit us and already have done your homework.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. And Yvonne?
And I would just add to that, I think making sure that you are targeting a problem that is of significance to the organization. Obviously, that's going to help you advance your efforts a lot farther. I know, like us, we're a public agency. We have have public procurement regulations that we follow under. So, I mean, I think it's similar to what we're trying to do inside the organization is, demonstrate the data, show us how your tool is able to, achieve those outcomes.
Thank you for that. I agree with everything you all said. And I think this is one of the things that we discussed in our pre-meeting, just being able to take a step back as a utility and collect your thoughts around what you're doing and what your program is, and then solidifying that and putting that information out there for folks to do their homework and approach you with solutions that will work for your situation, for your community, and not taking the one size should fits all approach because this is something that we're selling. We have time for one more question, maybe. You guys are very succinct in your responses, and I'm going to highlight a question that a young engineer has asked because it's so important to pull in the younger generations. Do you have any advice for a young engineer passionate about a career in digital water? And this is from Nicholas. Bethany, you're shaking your head.
Yes, I have to say that through my career, I've had really strong mentors who were eager to share information, and I was a sponge and I wanted to just suck up the information and to be able to learn and to grow. So I would certainly seek out a mentor who is in the space that you're interested in and be able to work with them and get feedback from them on a one-on-one basis.
Thank you. Tom or Yvonne, one of you want to take that one? Tom?
I agree that the mentor is very important. One of the, today's young people are so bright, so smart. They just run circles around me in terms of computers. The interns that we hire, I usually have to run a bit and say, hey, remember, I have to figure out how to try to keep this going after you go back to school. So you need to dumb it down a little bit. Yeah, I think that probably the most important piece of advice coming into this industry is to recognize how conservative we are, and we don't change very quickly until we reach that tipping point. And I've seen that here at the Water Authority. There are things that we opposed for 15 years, and then all of a sudden it flipped. And what would a technology approach that was unacceptable for 15 years, practically overnight it becomes okay. And young engineers just going to have to understand that that's the way this industry is, and be patient with it and be persuasive. Learn how to be persuasive.
Yeah. Yvonne, any closing thoughts on that?
I would just say, feel free to reach out. I think these are the kind of opportunities to do that kind of thing. So, connect with people, have informal conversations just to learn about people's work. I'd be happy to chat with you. I think in general, as organizations, we can really strive to encourage young people to join us. As Tom said, they can run circles around us with technology, but there's things that those of us who are more experienced can teach them as well, right? So, so it's a partnership, and just encourage you to do research and find the niche where you can contribute.
Thank you. So that brings us to time. I want to thank everyone who has attended this webinar for tuning in and staying with us. We have over 90 participants still with us. Great Q&A session, great presentations. SWAN and NACWA, again, I want to thank you for allowing me to moderate this very important discussion. And again, everyone bearing in mind that we are on the eve and talking about infrastructure funding for the water sector. And, we believe that funding solutions for smart water, for innovation is so critically important. I know at DC Water, we consider ourselves an innovative utility. And have just completed an innovation refresh ourselves. So this is critically important, not just in the US, but clearly around the globe. So thank you all for attending today. I want to thank our panelists for your presentations. And with that, I will say, see you next time.
Thank you again, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.